Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Radbod, co-founder and CEO of the PBC conference, the B2B conference for payments, banking, and compliance in the cannabis industry. I'm here today with IRS Commissioner for the Small Business and Self-Employed Division, Delon Harris, to discuss the IRS's latest marijuana tax initiative. Commissioner Harris will give us an executive summary of the IRS's marijuana tax initiative, and then we'll answer some questions we've received from leaders across the cannabis industry. Commissioner Harris, it's so good to see you again. Thank you for being a keynote at PBC 2021. With that said, please tell our audience a little bit about you and your role at the IRS.
Well, Josh, it's great to see you again as well. I really appreciated being there at the conference a couple of months ago and meeting you and so many others that are members of PBC. And so I was thrilled when you invited me to do this webinar as well. So I'm really glad to be here today. A little bit about myself, I've been with the IRS for 36 years now. I've been in the leadership position at the IRS for 27 of those years. Started my career in Oklahoma City as a revenue agent in what was the examination division then. And I've worked in different places throughout those 36 years. I spent some time in the Taxpayer Advocate Service, also in the Independent Office of Appeals. Spent a couple of years in the Large Business and International Division. And then for the last 2 years, I've been in the Small Business and Self-Employed Operating Division, which we refer to as SBSC. SBSC, we serve approximately 57 million taxpayers across the country. Really the biggest swath of the taxpayer population out of all the divisions at the IRS. Out of that 57 million, about 41 million are self-employed people who file a Schedule C or a Schedule F. Approximately 9 million are small businesses who file a corporate or a partnership return with assets less than $10 million. About 7 million fall into a category of employment taxes, excise taxes, estate and gift taxes. It's more than likely that the majority of those involved in the cannabis industry fall within that group of 57 million taxpayers. So within SBSC, we have approximately 20,000 employees. Around half of those belong to SBSC examination, and the remainder report to our collection and operations support division.
Wow. Okay. So 20,000 members in examinations. Got it. Logged and noted. So would you like to give us a quick summary about the marijuana tax initiative?
Sure, I would love to. It's really our mission at the IRS, not just with marijuana and cannabis industries, but with all taxpayers to promote voluntary compliance. And that can happen in different ways. When most people think of the IRS, they think of examinations or audits. And they think that's the only way that we interact or try to promote voluntary compliance with taxpayers. But we do our fair share of outreach and education as well, just like what we're doing today, and as we did with the article that appeared on irs.gov. However, we do our fair share of audits as well, and we do take enforcement action whenever it's necessary. Regarding the cannabis marijuana industry, we developed a strategy that we hope will increase voluntary compliance and identify and address non-compliance when it's there. Our focus is to positively impact filing and paying and reporting compliance on the part of all cannabis businesses, to keep those audits to a minimum that's out there within that particular business. Some of the key parts of the strategy include training for our revenue agents and examiners that work those cases so that they can conduct an examination that is a quality one. And then also, of course, providing our examiners with the job aids to facilitate those quality examinations. We also want to make sure that there is coordination among the divisions at the IRS, including not only SBSE, but also our attorneys over in our chief counsel's office, also the large business and international division, and others across the IRS. We also want to determine ways to identify non-compliant taxpayers so that when we do those examinations, we're focusing on businesses or individuals that have a high risk for non-compliance. We don't want to burden those with an examination if there's no there's nothing there for us to find. So we also collaborate with external stakeholders, again, like we're doing today. We hope that the more we are partners with those in the private industry, the better chance there is for compliance for the businesses that they represent. And then lastly, we want to ensure that taxpayers have access to information on how to properly comply with filing requirements.
Commissioner Harris, thank you so much for that overview and for sharing this critical information with the industry. As we were planning this webinar together, you had stressed how important it is to communicate with the cannabis industry directly and share information that can help the industry navigate these complex cannabis tax issues. With that said, let's jump into the questions for today. So you mentioned the article earlier, the one that you published on irs.gov about cannabis business owners and their tax responsibilities. Can you talk about the specific areas of focus for the IRS as it relates to the cannabis industry?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. As I'm sure you're aware, and everybody listening, that a business engaged in the sale or the production of marijuana or cannabis is considered illegal under federal law. But nevertheless, it's a business in every sense of the word, whether it's categorized under federal statute as legal or illegal. It still remains to be obligated to pay federal income tax on the taxable income that it earns. As such, Internal Revenue Code doesn't make a difference between income derived from a legal source under the federal law or income derived from what is considered an illegal source under the federal code. It's all income and it's all taxable and must be reported on the return. Marijuana or cannabis is a Schedule I controlled substance. It has been since 1970. It's under the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act. Because of this section, the Internal Revenue Code 280E disallows all deductions or credits for a business that sells marijuana, even if they operate in states that have legalized sale of marijuana. But Section 280E doesn't prohibit the participant in the marijuana industry to reduce their gross receipts by properly calculating a cost of goods sold to determine its income. A cannabis dispensary may not deduct, for example, advertising or selling expenses, but it may reduce its gross receipts by its cost of goods sold as calculated per Internal Revenue Code 471. Additionally, cannabis businesses have no exemption on employment tax obligations. So they must file employment taxes just like any other business. And as any other small business, they would be required to make those quarterly tax payments as well.
Thank you so much for that, Commissioner Harris. Next question. As a largely cash-based industry, what should cannabis businesses be aware of?
Well, this is something that is very specific to the cannabis industry. And because it is listed as a Schedule I drug for federal purposes, Many marijuana businesses do not participate in the US banking system, and they conduct business in cash. Cash transactions need to be reported and recorded just like any other form of payment that a business would receive income. If a marijuana business receives more than $10,000 in cash in any single transaction or in related transactions, they must file Form 8300, which is a report of cash payments over $10,000. They have to do that within 15 days after receipt of the payment. So it's one of those forms that follow the transaction and is not necessarily a form that only has to be filed once a year by a certain date. We've taken steps to help businesses existing outside the traditional banking system, such as this industry, to meet their tax obligations. Some of our IRS taxpayer assistance centers, or TACs as we refer to them, accept cash, but an appointment must be scheduled to make those cash payments. You can find out which of those taxpayer assistance centers accept cash, and you can learn how to schedule that appointment by going to irs.gov. Also, we have publications at the IRS, and publication 5435, which is entitled Need to Pay Your Taxes in Cash, also provides tax payment options.
Thank you so much for that information, Commissioner Harris. And this kind of ties in directly to that last question. So how important is record keeping for cannabis businesses?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lead you down a path that I shouldn't, but like many cash-based businesses, we have seen instances where there is poor record keeping when we go out and do examinations. You must keep records and receipts, canceled checks, other documents that support an item of income or a deduction that would go toward the cost of goods sold in this case, or a credit appearing on the return. As long as they're material and rely to anything that is deducted or reported on the return itself. Well-organized records make it much easier to prepare the tax return and to help provide answers if your return is selected by IRS for an audit. All requirements that apply to hard copy books and records also apply to business records which are maintained using an electronic accounting software or a point of sale software. Any electronic software carry the same requirements as if you were handwriting your books and records. The electronic system must provide a complete and accurate record of your data that is accessible to the IRS.
Thank you so much for that, Commissioner Harris. And you touched on this earlier, and I know this is a really important fact that you guys are trying to drive home here. How does the IRS keep businesses informed about tax laws and issues affecting the cannabis industry?
Yeah, well, we've developed and launched a marijuana industry page on irs.gov. You can go in and you can easily find it just by, once you get to irs.gov, in the search box, you can type in marijuana industry and it will be the first link from that search that comes up. Interestingly enough about that link, ever since I went out and spoke at the PBC conference, I came back and we're working on changing that to the cannabis industry or the cannabis/marijuana industry, because I really feel like a lot of the folks that are in the industry prefer to use the word cannabis instead of marijuana. And so we're making that change. But for now, you would type in marijuana industry and it would pull up the page that would give you information about not only general information that would help you understand and meet tax responsibilities required by the cannabis industry, but the page includes links to pages of more specific information. It's a good starting reference point to address federal tax filing and reporting requirements specific to the industry. The page provides information and links to the internal code section 280E, which specifically talks about income reporting and the fact that the cost of goods sold is really the only expense that can be deducted. It talks about cash payment options, reporting large cash payment receipts that we talked about earlier, estimated tax payments, and keeping good records. We've also posted frequently asked questions on irs.gov to answer questions commonly asked by those in the industry, and we add to that all the time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Commissioner Harris. And thank you for being here today. And thank you to your staff for partnering with us on this webinar and providing this critical information to the industry. For more about the tax rules and regulations that affect cannabis businesses, please join us next year at our PBC conference in Washington, D.C. on September 7th and 8th at the Capitol Hilton Hotel. Thank you so much again, Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.